In a city where entire wars break out over a single block, MUBU Krump did something different. He treated the violence like a scoreboard. He wasn't just beefing, he was bragging. Every time a rival fell, he turned it into a punchline, pushing the drill scene's limits and daring anyone to check him. But when you live that loud in a world built on silence, death starts paying attention. And when the streets finally came to settle the score, there were no second chances. This is the chilling downfall of a man who turned murder into entertainment. Chicago, one of America's most iconic cities. It's the third largest in the country, a global hub that's long stood tall in industries like finance, communication, and transportation. With the fourth largest economy of any metro area on Earth, the city has always been a powerhouse. It's diverse, vibrant, and filled with culture. Tourists come for the skyline, the deep dish pizza, the music, and that magnetic city energy that only Chicago has. But behind that glossy postcard image, there's another Chicago, one that tells a much darker story. In some neighborhoods, the reality hits hard enough to make you think twice before calling it the Windy City. And it's from that harsh reality that a new name was born, one that carried weight and controversy: Chiraq. This nickname didn't come from nowhere. It grew out of comparisons between the violence in Chicago and the war in Iraq, a shocking parallel that forced people to pay attention. Artists like Chief Keef, Nicki Minaj, Meek Mill, and even Spike Lee pushed the name into the mainstream, using their platforms to shine a light on what was really happening in the city's streets. The name Chiraq stuck because of one grim fact. People started realizing that the number of murders in Chicago was rivaling the number of U.S. troops killed in Afghanistan. Reports from the early 2010s laid it out in black and white. Between 2003 and 2011, over 4,200 people were murdered in Chicago. In 2012 alone, another 512 lives were lost. By 2013, the city had earned a chilling title: the murder capital of America. At the same time, the war in Afghanistan had claimed just over 2,100 U.S. troops since 2001. Side by side, the numbers told a disturbing story. Chicago's streets were statistically more deadly than an active war zone. What made that so wild was that most big U.S. cities were actually getting safer during that same period. But Chicago, it was going the other way. A lot of that change traces back to a major decision made in the early 2000s. City officials began tearing down Chicago's massive public housing projects, those concrete high-rises that had long been ruled by gangs. The idea was to break up the concentrated crime and spread people throughout the city. But that plan backfired in a major way. Those projects, as dangerous as they were, had unintentionally contained the chaos. They acted like a barrier, keeping most of the violence within their walls. Once they were gone, that violence spilled out and spread across the city. Former residents were relocated through Section 8 housing, but that only made things worse. Rival gang members who had once been separated were suddenly living right next to each other. Old turf lines blurred, new beefs erupted, the streets turned into battlegrounds. And it wasn't just poor city planning that fueled the violence. According to former gang members, pride played a big part too. In a Vice documentary, ex-gang members explained that the code had changed. Older generations used to fight with their hands, but now kids were too scared to lose. They'd rather pull a trigger than take an L. Add to that the crumbling infrastructure, high unemployment, underfunded schools, mental health clinics shutting down, and families losing homes in the foreclosure crisis. And you had the perfect storm, the kind of pressure cooker that turns frustration into bloodshed. Then came the gun problem. In Chicago, guns became as common as cell phones. Teenagers could get their hands on one faster than they could order food. The Chicago Sun-Times once told the story of a teenager named Chris who said he could make one call, ride down the block, and have a gun in 5 minutes. His plug, a so-called gun guy, someone who buys weapons legally, scratches off the serial numbers and sells them on the street for around $600 a piece. Even police officials admitted the problem was out of control. Former Superintendent Gary McCarthy once explained that it was ridiculously easy to walk into a gun store, buy 10 handguns at once, and walk out without anyone tracking where they ended up. Those weapons flooded the streets, feeding the never-ending cycle of violence. By the time Vice dropped their documentary, the numbers were shocking. More than 69 active gangs in the city, broken down into over 625 smaller cliques. That meant full-on wars were happening over tiny patches of turf, sometimes only a couple blocks long. Cross the wrong street, and you might not make it home. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened to MUBU Krump. In the rough, unfiltered streets of Chicago, where survival is a daily grind, rap music isn't just something to vibe to. It's a lifeline and a war zone all at once. And out of that chaos came MUBU Krump, a force who demanded respect the moment he stepped on the scene. His life was this raw blend of struggle, loyalty, and heartbreak, a story written in the cracked pavement of the South Side. Born and bred in Chicago's South Side, MUBU Krump, real name John Dent, grew up surrounded by danger that never took a day off. For him, drill music became more than beats and rhymes. It was therapy, a way to turn pain and frustration into art. Through his music, he told the unfiltered truth about what life really looked like in his world. Rolling with King Louie's MUBU crew, short for Man Up, Band Up, Krump found more than just a rap collective. It was brotherhood. It was purpose. The crew's code was simple: loyalty, resilience, survival. They weren't just spitting lyrics, they were living a battle cry. And Krump embodied that energy completely. His verses hit hard with the reality of poverty, violence, and the fragile dreams constantly getting crushed in his city. But Krump wasn't only known for his rap ties, he was also part of the Gangster Disciples, a crew born out of Chicago's gritty history. The Gangster Disciples, or GDs, came together back in 1969 when two groups, the Black Disciples and the High Supreme Gangsters, decided to merge forces. Larry Hoover, who'd later become the undisputed leader, pushed for unity. He was tired of seeing Black communities torn apart by endless violence. His goal? To build strength, stability, and maybe even some positive change. For a while, it looked like the plan might actually work. The GDs started running real businesses, restaurants, community spots, and other legit ventures. But that peace didn't last long. By the 1970s, Chicago was drowning in drugs, and the same neighborhoods the gang had tried to uplift were now flooded with poison. Soon enough, the GDs were knee-deep in the trade. Money started flowing in fast, but so did betrayal, addiction, and death. A drug-related murder eventually landed Larry Hoover and Andrew Young behind bars. Still, even locked up, Hoover kept expanding the GD network. He built alliances that led to the creation of the Folk Nation, which even grew to include a Latino faction called the Spanish Gangster Disciples. But power never stays peaceful for long. By 1991, internal wars broke out between the Black Disciples and the BGDN, shattering the alliances Hoover had worked so hard to form. Even after the split, his influence stayed strong throughout the 90s. Hoover might have been behind bars for life, but the Gangster Disciples continued to be one of the most powerful gangs in Illinois. Years later, in 2005, the gang's reach even made headlines overseas when a GD member named Rico Williams was convicted of murdering another member during an initiation near a U.S. airbase in Germany. That case just showed how far the GD name stretched beyond Chicago's blocks. In the larger gang landscape, the GDs are part of the Folk Nation, rivals to the Vice Lords, and enemies of the Black P. Stones. It's a world built on alliances and opposition, and being tied to it added heavy weight to who MUBU Krump was. His name was out there in the streets, echoing through rival factions. And with that kind of attention came danger. Krump wasn't just another name in the drill scene, he was a lightning rod for the beefs that defined it. He went head-to-head with big figures like Lil Durk and Lil Reese, and those social media battles between 2013 and 2015 only boosted his reputation. His music hit like a warning shot every time, full of rage, pride, and the kind of street poetry you don't sugarcoat. But while Krump's spotlight kept getting brighter, someone else was quietly coming up right behind him. Out on the south side of Chicago, word was spreading fast. 051. Melly had built a name that carried weight, fear, and a cold reputation. Folks said his body count was in the double digits, and before long, they started calling him the grave digger of Chiraq. But how did this young man earn a title like that? Melly, whose real name was Yarmel Williams, came up around the Calumet buildings, also known as the Randolph Towers. That area wasn't just home, it was the foundation of his BD roots, short for Black Disciple. 6,217 South Calumet Avenue wasn't just an address, It was basically the heart of the Black Disciples operations. To understand Melly, you got to understand the legacy of the Black Disciples themselves. The gang, also called the Black Disciples Nation, or BDN, started back in the 1960s on the South Side. It was founded by David Barksdale, a man whose family moved up from Mississippi in 1957. Within just a few years, Barksdale became a major player in the Chicago underworld, leading a group known as the Devil's Disciples. By the late 60s, he was consolidating power, bringing together smaller gangs under one banner. That move birthed the Black Disciples Nation, an alliance of over a dozen different sets. His goal was simple but smart. Stop wasting energy fighting over corners and come together as one united force. In 1969, Barksdale teamed up with Larry Hoover, merging their crews into what became the Black Gangster Disciple Nation, the BGDN. But before all that unity, there was chaos. The Black Disciples had been locked in a bloody war with the Blackstone Rangers, and things got ugly. One night, Barksdale was ambushed outside a bar and hit multiple times in an assassination attempt ordered by the Stones. He somehow survived the attack and went on to tighten his grip on the streets, earning his nickname as the King of the Streets. That reign didn't last forever, though. In 1974, Barksdale died from health issues that stemmed from the same injuries he took in that 1968 shooting. After his death, the BD movement shifted. They split away from the BGDN alliance and reshaped themselves into a more structured, independent organization. Years later, after the Calumet apartments were torn down, Melly and his family relocated to 59th and Calumet, right where the 600 crew held it down. He lived with his mother, Angie, his brother Wu, and his sister Kenjay. He went to Deuceable High School, where he started kicking it with the Mickey Cobras around 50th and 51st, stretching from King Drive to Cottage Grove. But things took a sharp turn when he linked up with 051 Zico from Young Money, who just so happened to be KTS Vaughn's cousin. When Zico was killed by THF 46's Aki, that's when Melly dove headfirst into Young Money. Now, people still debate what set Melly really claimed. Some say he was Mickey Cobra. Others swear he stayed BD, but one thing's clear. He stood firm with Young Money. What made it even wilder was that YM had deep beef with the BDs, yet Melly, a renegade BD himself, managed to move between both worlds untouched. That alone showed how much respect he commanded in every area he stepped in. That respect didn't just come from his attitude, it came from who he was connected to. Melly had family and ties that ran deep across the south and east sides. He stayed at times with his grandmother and his father, Yamur Williams, and he was close to his uncle, MUBU Krump, who was killed back in 2007. He was also the nephew of G. Slim, one of the founding members of NLMB, who met a similar fate in the streets. His stepfather, Jerome Frito Golden, an OGBD, was serving life for armed robbery and 4 murders. And that's just scratching the surface. Melly's bloodline ran through sets like 051 and TYMB. He was cousins with 051 KD, the TYMB twins Courtney and Cortez, Big Dre, and TYMB Face. But deep connections in a deadly family tree don't automatically make someone the most feared man in the city. What truly made Melly's name echo through Chicago was the way he moved. Calm, confident, and always one step ahead. The real question became, how did a kid from 59th and Calumet rise to become one of the most feared names in the streets of Chiraq? Now, pain didn't just change him, it warped him. It twisted him from a savage into something darker, something that couldn't be tamed. The story really starts after one moment that flipped everything upside down. When THF 46 Aki allegedly took out his own homie, YM Zico, right there in a McDonald's parking lot. That one hit sparked a war that would burn through Chicago's streets for years. The fallout was instant. That shooting lit the fuse between THF and YM, and right in the middle of it all was Melly, loud, reckless, and ready to ride for his side. YM wasn't about to take the loss quietly either. They allegedly came back around 2010 for revenge, setting off a deadly cycle that would pull in just about everybody. When 600's M Thang allegedly dropped 051 T Streets, Melly and his right-hand man, 051 Kiddo, weren't about to let that slide. In response, they allegedly handled 600 Shaq on the 5900 block of South Calumet Avenue. That murder poured gasoline on a fire that was already burning too hot. Melly started catching smoke from all directions, even from his own old block. That's what made him so unpredictable. He could dap you up one day, then slide on you the next if he felt disrespected. You could see how deep the pain cut when his Twitter handle switched to Fats Big Brother, a tribute to his fallen brother Fats. Rumor had it 600 C Die got revenge for Shaq by taking Fats out, and when that happened, it broke Melly down. Losing Fats made his heart go cold. Every death around him stripped away another layer of empathy until there was nothing but hate left. But the cycle never stopped. 051 Kiddo wasn't about to let Fats' death go unanswered. He allegedly caught 600's trick slipping in Washington Park and handled him right there. By then, Melly was losing everybody close to him, but he was also putting in his own work. 051YM was deep in the trenches, sliding every time the ops tried to raise their score. Then came another major hit, 600's La Capone. Word spread that Capone, C-Die, and Tricks were all seen at the scene when 051 Fats was gunned down. To make things worse, they jumped online after and mocked Fats' death publicly. For Melly, who was already known for being ruthless and disrespectful, that just added fuel to his fire. He took pride in seeing his enemies laid out. It was all part of that grim Chiraq mentality. Meanwhile, Lil Durk, one of the fastest rising rappers out of Chicago and the face of OTF, was mourning hard over losing La Capone. That tragedy would soon set off another round of chaos between OTF and 051. 600 struck again, this time killing 051's Lil Mark, a well-known rapper and respected shooter. What happened next was pure disrespect. 300, 600, OTF, and THF members started taking pictures at the exact spot Mark was killed. Lil Durk even went as far as filming a music video at that same bus stop. That was the last straw for Melly. His rage hit a whole new level. Soon after, Durk's own manager, OTF Chino, became Melly's next target. His mistake? Appearing in THFTP's music video Bus Stop, a track that mocked dead ops, including Lil Mark. That was enough reason for Melly. He tracked Chino down and shot him while he sat in his car on the 8,400 block of South Stony Island Avenue. While Durk's camp mourned, Melly was online laughing about it. He clowned Chino's death at every opportunity, joined by his partner in crime, MUBU Krump. Fast forward to 2014 when rapper T.I. hosted a meet and greet at the shop 147 in Harvey, Illinois. It was supposed to be positive vibes, fans, artists, and good energy. But that didn't last long. A fight broke out between Lil Durk's OTF crew and King Louie's MUBU clique. Things went from cool to chaos in seconds. King BJ from OTF was even caught on camera swinging on MUBU Krump, knocking him back. Later, BJ laughed it off online, flipping Bobby Shmurda's famous line into a diss, cold as ice. Of course, the beef didn't stop there. DRO and OTF's D-Thang hit social media throwing shots, while MUBU Krump tried to brush it off on Instagram, claiming he was good and unbothered. Then in 2016, things took another turn. Lil Durk's DJ Bands, got caught slipping at a Chicago mall. Out of nowhere, MUBU Krump ran up and punched him clean in the face. It was all caught on camera. Bands dropped, Krump dipped, and then went straight to Twitter to brag about it. He posted wild messages like, "We just scored," and "It goes down, Lil Durk," even adding "Put the guns down" in the same breath. Then he followed up with, "When a dude wanna meet, we leave you in the street," before claiming he didn't want anyone dead. Just embarrassed. Durk wasn't going for it. He fired back with, "See me and run," making it clear he wasn't hiding behind tweets. The tension kept boiling, and anyone watching knew it was only a matter of time before the streets turned bloody again. Because by then, MUBU Krump wasn't just another name in the mix. He was one of the biggest reasons Melly's story spiraled into the darkness it became. And that part of the story was just getting started. Now, Chino was gone, but for Melly, that still wasn't enough. The pain inside him was eating him alive, and the public disrespect coming from Durk, he couldn't let that slide for nothing. Now, Durk wasn't just some regular dude. He was smart, strategic, and always 10 steps ahead. He knew how to move to avoid being touched. But in the streets, if you can't get your main target, you hit the people closest to them. And that's exactly what Melly did. He shifted his focus to Durk's blood cousin, Newski, better known as OTF Nunu. It all went down on the 700 block of East 87th Street. Nusky was sitting in his car when Melly crept up and let off shots. Nusky tried to get away, but he crashed and passed away from his injuries. The saddest part? That happened just 2 days after Durk had officially signed Nusky finally setting him up for success in the rap game. But that same cycle of loss came right back around for Melly. His homie MUBU Krump, the same one who had clowned Dirk with him after Newski got killed, was about to face his own fate. The irony in that moment was heavy. And when it came to Dirk, you couldn't underestimate him. He wasn't called a demon for nothing. His hatred for Melly was public, loud, and constant. He even dropped tracks like that, where he sent direct shots saying, "It's one op that we ain't blast. After him, it ain't no fun." That was aimed straight at Melly, but Melly didn't care. He was numb by now, staring death in the face like it was normal. For him, the violence wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was therapy. It was how he coped. Maybe that's why he walked into that party later on, knowing danger was close. Maybe he just didn't care if it was his time. Even with Dirk threatening him in songs and the streets whispering about a $150,000 bounty on his head, Melly kept mocking him online. Then came the hit. 15-year-old THF Raheem pulled up on Melly, Ario, and Arrow on South Wentworth Avenue. Shots rang out. Melly got hit in the head and foot, Ario in the shoulder, Arrow grazed. But by some miracle, all three survived. Melly being hit in the head and living through it only fed into his reputation as the one who couldn't be killed. That same night, they slid back. Word is 051 Arrow handled business and got Raheem, leveling the score again. But there was a twist. Raheem was actually FBG Duck's cousin, and Melly and Duck were tight. Still, that didn't matter. In that world, family didn't make you safe if you were on the other side. Duck understood the rules of the game. Raheem's death, though, stirred up something serious. He was the stepson of THF Bezu, one of the biggest figures in the THF camp. Bezu wasn't just a name, he was respected like a general. And here's the wild part. Melly and Bezu actually had mutual respect for each other. They even went live together once, laughing and debating which crew had the higher score like it was a sport. After Raheem was gone, though, all that respect disappeared. Bezu was out for blood. He caught up with Melly and Krump, and shots were fired. Melly was hit in the arm and chest, but Bezu ended Crump's life right there. Now, when Lil Durk dropped the voice in 2022, the timing couldn't have been more emotional. The whole project came right after the heartbreaking loss of King Von, Durk's close friend, right-hand man, and one of OTF's most promising artists. Von's death didn't just shake the industry, it tore through Durk's world, and that pain became the heartbeat of the album. The tragedy went down outside Monaco Hookah Lounge in Atlanta, Georgia. Durk's crew and Quando Rondo's people ran into each other, and what started as a heated argument exploded into gunfire. In the chaos that followed, King Von was fatally shot, along with another man. 4 others got hit, and the scene turned into one of the most talked about shootings in hip-hop. An off-duty Atlanta police officer working at the lounge, along with another nearby officer, tried to step in when the shots started flying. According to reports, both officers ended up exchanging gunfire with the people involved. Later on, Atlanta police made it clear that Von was actually shot during the first exchange between the two groups, before the officers even got involved. He wasn't found on the scene either. Instead, someone rushed him to the hospital in a private car, but he didn't make it. At first, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation said 3 people were dead, but Atlanta police later corrected that, officially confirming 2 fatalities, King Von and 1 other man. Meanwhile, police found 3 suspects at the scene suffering from gunshot wounds. They were taken to the hospital by ambulance. 3 more people arrived at the hospital later in private vehicles, bringing the total number of injured to 6. 1 of them was listed in critical condition, but the others were stable. 2 people near the lounge were also detained and faced possible charges. Thankfully, no officers were hurt during the chaos. As for Quando Rondo, despite the tension and speculation surrounding him, he wasn't under investigation and continued moving freely. Now, when fans heard Durk's track Redman, they immediately thought he was firing shots at Quando Rondo. The timing made it easy to assume the track dropped after Von's death and the lyrics sounded personal. But when you really break down what Durk said, the story takes a different turn. In Redman, Durk opens up about losing his cousin Newski, and then drops a line that had fans arguing for years. They asked me, what am I going to do about Krump? Shit, he's dead. A lot of people misheard that bar and thought he said, qua shit, he dead, like he was taking a shot at Quando Rondo. But once you look at the history, it makes way more sense. He was talking about MUBU Krump. Krump had mocked Newski's death years earlier And that disrespect sparked a chain of beef that didn't stop until Krump was killed in 2018.